Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? Digital photography is super convenient and absolutely ubiquitous. So why are some people getting back into film? So not too long ago, I uploaded an episode that was all about how I found this 35 or so year old roll of film in a bag of camera equipment that I inherited. I'll include a card up above so you can go check that one out if you haven't already. And it had been quite a while since I had shot film. Of course, I'm old enough where I grew up shooting film. The very first camera I ever had was this cheap little point and shoot that I bought at the grocery store for, I'd like to say 20 or 25 bucks. Saved up my allowance for quite a while to be able to buy that. And of course, it took film. And I had several other kind of point and shoot, simpler film cameras moving on from there. In that previous episode, I talked about this guy, my Olympus OM10, and this was my first SLR. And it's where I really started learning about photography. Not just here's how you load the film into the camera and push the shutter button to take the picture, but actually the concepts of composition, what makes for an interesting photograph. And also the technical aspects to it. Things like shutter speed and aperture and ISO of the film. All of these things that kind of go into making a camera work and producing a compelling looking image. And I find it really interesting because a lot of those things still apply today. And a lot of those are very much just carryovers from the film era into digital. But digital really improves on all of the major drawbacks that film had. So with film, obviously you're kind of limited to what you've got loaded in the camera. And you've got to very much kind of play by the rules, so to say. I mean, in some ways you could cheat and you could push film or pull film. If you needed to shoot in a darker area than your film was normally going to be suitable for, you can just go ahead and kind of fudge it and then make up for that lack of exposure when you actually go through and process the film, do all that post work after taking the picture. But with digital, it's just so convenient, right? You have all these settings on the camera and you can set them all on an image by image basis. You change them on the fly. And it's really not a big deal anymore. I mean, yes, you're still limited by that kind of, triangle of settings of shutter speed and aperture and sensitivity is probably the better way to refer to ISO now. But other than that, you've got a lot of latitude. And that's just one of the reasons why digital has really taken over for photography. And that just so much more flexibility. I mean, you can be shooting one type of photograph 1 minute and going to a completely different environment, different setting, different composition, different subject that requires vastly different settings. And you can shoot, that type of image with just a couple of tweaks to your camera settings. And like I mentioned in that previous video, there's just this incredible convenience to it. Not just being able to change those settings, but you only need to carry one camera. And if you have a big memory card, you only need to carry one memory card. And you can review the images right away after you take them to make sure that they turn out. And because you could only ever really hold at most 36 to 40 exposures on a roll of film, with digital, you just throw a big memory card in there and you can suddenly shoot thousands of pictures. Generally without stopping. You can just keep going, and some people just hold the shutter down and just keep taking pictures over and over and over again. They'll take dozens of pictures of the same shot and then go back through and edit and just find the one that looks the best, When photographers shooting film would take pictures of groups of people, you'd have to be very careful to make sure, did anyone blink during the picture, that sort of thing. Which is still a problem now, but the easy answer to that is you just fire off a whole bunch of pictures and find the one where nobody blinked. Or if somebody blinked in all of the pictures, you can just throw them into a tool like Photoshop and just stitch them all together really quick and easy. So I totally understand and get how revolutionary digital has been for imaging. I mean, photographs have been around for almost 200 years now. Like the first kind of known surviving image that has come out of a camera was from somewhere in the 1820s. We're quickly approaching that. So we've had photography as kind of a staple of human culture for a very long time. Digital's only been around for a couple of decades, but even in those couple of decades, the advancements have just been incredible. I remember some of the first digital cameras that were kind of seriously considered, tools, not experimental hack type of things, but that you could go out and purchase and use. A lot of those were actually just modified film cameras. In fact, I used one back in college. It was made by Kodak, but it was a Canon SLR that had been modified. They basically took the film door off and mounted this digital image sensor and stuff to the back of it. So it shot like a film camera, but it took digital pictures. Of course, with flash memory capacity being what it was back then, you really only got a couple of dozen shots at most. Battery life wasn't great. Image quality wasn't great. But even then, those first digital cameras, a lot of people picked up on them, at least professional photographers picked up on them because of the amount of time they saved. Instead of having to take a roll of film and run it through the darkroom and either shoot, make prints from the negatives or scan them or whatever, it's like, hey, here's a file and you're done. And the vast majority of people who bought into those very kind of first-gen digital cameras were photojournalists, people working for newspapers, because they were shooting on deadline, and the faster you could get the pictures in, the happier your editor was going to be with you, because it allowed them to publish sooner, or at least not have to, run it all out into the last minute. But also it meant less work for you, because it's just like, hey, here's the file. I'm going to, send it to you. However, I'll upload it through the internet, through a dial-up, whatever they had at the time, and then you're done. And with all of that, because of how much time has passed, though, I think in some ways we've really kind of lost touch with some of the concepts of photography, or some of the care that normally was taken when taking pictures. I kind of touched on this a little bit in that episode. This podcast, I kind of wanted to expand on it maybe a bit more. A lot of it comes down to, I think, that whole, with digital, you can just hold the shutter button down thing, right? I'll admit that's something that I'll do occasionally too. I'll rarely take one picture of something. Now, granted, ever since I started doing the YouTube channel, the number of still photos that I've taken has really kind of dropped off. It used to be that when I'd go somewhere interesting, go on vacation, whatever, I'd take a camera and I'd do a bunch of still photography. Now I'm trying to spin it in the perspective of, is there any really cool video footage that I can get? For example, when I went up to the North Shore in Minnesota, I took my film camera for the purpose of, having an excuse to shoot that old film, but I also took a digital camera. All that digital camera ever did was really take images and video for the purpose of that episode. So, in some ways, I've kind of lost touch with still photography in one way or another, just because my focus has shifted, but the way we use photos have changed. I don't see it so much as we take pictures to get them printed and framed and hung on the wall. I'm not saying nobody does that anymore. Plenty of people certainly do. But that seems to be less and less. And it seems to be less and less I'm going to take these pictures and, do a slideshow or something like that to show them off. Now it's all very kind of heat of the moment type of stuff where it's very quick. Instagram is something that's really to blame for this. Now, I actually like Instagram as a social media platform. There are some platforms that I really just don't like. Facebook is one of them, and that's why I don't have a This Does Not Compute Facebook page. Twitter, for the most part, I like, but some days it's, yeah, maybe not. Instagram, though, generally, I like because it's very limited in focus and it's limited in scope, and you can't really go off the rails. You can't, post this multi-paragraph diatribe about how bad of a day you had and seeking sympathy and your political beliefs and all that kind of crap that you'd see like on Facebook. With Instagram, it's very simple. It's you post a picture and then maybe a caption. And I like that. But at the same time, in some ways, it kind of trivializes the photography. Especially with the built-in filters in Instagram, when you upload a picture, it kind of reinforces this notion of just take the picture now and worry about making it look good later. Again, I'm not saying that no one pays attention to good photography anymore. And if anything, because of digital and its convenience, that base may have broadened. There may be even more people who are thinking along those terms. But I think the overall quality of images in terms of composition may have kind of slid a bit because of digital. So that brings us to, why is film in some ways coming back? Now, I should note, film isn't coming back to the same strength and growth rate that another analog medium like vinyl records have come back to. Film has always been kind of a niche thing in some ways. I mean, lots of people owned film cameras, but they weren't pushing through tons and tons of rolls. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to the expense. And that's one of the main drawbacks to film, even to this day, is, yes, the cameras themselves cost money. Granted, used film cameras these days don't really go for much money. So if you want to get into film, it's pretty inexpensive to do so. But buying the rolls of film themselves cost money. And then developing those rolls of film cost money. And in between there, you still only got so many exposures per roll. So you can't really just, go nuts and fill the memory card up. Sure, you can hold film cameras have continuous shooting modes. If you wanted to load a roll of film into a camera and hold the shutter button down, you can do it. But that's a really quick and easy way to burn through a decent chunk of money. So what it does, because of that expense, because of the inconvenience in some ways of doing it, right? Like you have to buy the roll of film, you have to load it into the camera. That takes a little bit of time. You have to wind it up when you're done, and you have to get it processed, whether you're doing that yourself or sending it to someone else. What it does is it slows down the whole process of taking pictures. It changes it from being, I'll just throw the camera in my bag when I go on vacation and, just take a bunch of pictures, or I don't even have a dedicated camera. I've got a smartphone and I'll just, keep that with me. It takes it from that kind of mentality to, I'm going to pack my camera gear and I'm going to go out and I'm going to take pictures. And it gets you in a different mindset. It gets you to focus more on what you're actually looking at. And that's something that I also kind of felt when I was shooting all those pictures for that episode. When I've gone and shot digitally, and I've been to a lot of the places where I shot those pictures before, several times in fact. When I'd go to those places and shoot digitally, it was all, relatively quick. I mean, I'd try to take my time taking the pictures, but it was just, I don't know if this framing will work out well. What the hell? It's a digital image. It doesn't cost me anything to take. I'll take that shot anyway, right? So you kind of end up with a lot of garbage pictures when you're, going out and shooting that way, which adds to editing time in the end. But it doesn't really ever let you get, I feel, into this mindset of, I'm going to get the most of my photography, like film does. Film, you're holding the camera in your hands with, one of only a few rolls of film that you have with you. Every shot counts, and every shot costs money. Fun fact, of those 20 images that I took on that vintage roll of film, because it was a 20 exposure roll, I had to take one of those images twice because I screwed up on the timing. It was the image of the wave kind of breaking up against the shore, the rock cliff kind of thing. I wanted to time that shot so the wave was right in the middle of breaking when I hit the shutter. The first image of that I screwed up on, and I was just a little bit too late. And I was like genuinely upset about that. Not like, oh my God, my vacation's ruined kind of upset, but it's like, crap, that's one less image that I can take now because I only had so many. And even if that wasn't a rare roll of film, even if I had a dozen rolls of film with me, it would still have felt that way because each of those images has a cost. So like a real monetary cost, I should even add. So that's one of the things about film, I think, that are driving people back to it is, yes, it's got this really cool analog kind of tangible aspect to it, right? When you're done, you've got these physical negatives that you can look through and you can get prints off of, and you've got some imperfections in them that can add some cool aspects to it. Image grain can look kind of cool. Maybe you get a scratch in a negative in a very opportune place that makes the image look kind of cool. That sort of thing. You don't really get that with digital. But it's also just the concept of every shot has to count when you're shooting film for most people that I think really lends some major appeal to it because you're double checking, you're triple checking your framing and your settings on your camera, and you're kind of crossing your fingers every time you hit the shutter button, hoping that one image works out. Because you just don't know until you're done. You don't know until you get those images developed. And I think that anticipation, that waiting is, yes, it's a little bit of stress, but it's also part of the fun. You can't go back and immediately discover whether that image was good or not, whether it turned out correctly or not. And if it didn't turn out, you can quick reset up your shot and shoot it again. Keep trying until you get it. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps your mind fresh. And it really helps you reconnect not just with these acts of taking pictures, but with what you're really looking at. And I think that's a lot of the appeal to shooting film these days. And I'm glad to see that some people are getting back into it in one way or another, that digital imaging hasn't taken photography so far that it's so commoditized that there really isn't anyone who has any of those skills anymore. If you're interested in getting into photography, like more than just taking, snapshots on your smartphone, actually going out buying a camera, really learning how to take good pictures, yes, you should get a digital camera because it's much less of an investment that way, right? You can pick up a used DSLR or used mirrorless camera for just a few $100, and then you're set, you're done. You don't have to pay any more money after that. But at some point, I would really encourage everyone to at least try shooting film. Buy or borrow a film SLR and buy a few rolls of black and white film. And the whole black and white versus color debate, I could go on for that for a while. I'm going to stay out of that for this episode. So let's just assume film is film, regardless of whether you're shooting black and white or color. But I would encourage anyone to really try it. Give it a shot. It's a great way to learn from your mistakes because the mistakes are very visible. And sometimes people work better under pressure, which film, it definitely adds a bit of pressure. So with all of that said, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, digital is evil. I take advantage of digital imaging every day. And without digital video, I wouldn't have a YouTube channel. If I had to shoot everything to analog video and edit in an analog fashion, if the ability to film video to an SD card and stick it in a nonlinear editor in a computer, if none of that existed, YouTube wouldn't exist. Do you think anyone would give me like a real TV show? Do you think anyone would give me the budget to do what I do as a TV show? No, not for a real, like broadcast TV show. So I owe a lot to digital imaging, and I'm not here to say it's bad or evil or anything, but in some ways, you lose touch with what comes before. I'm very happy to see that analog, medium is coming back in some ways, especially vinyl records, because I think they're a lot of fun and they help you reconnect with, especially the older music that was originally published on them. But I'm glad to see film in some ways coming back as well. And I hope it actually picks up steam because it's not like this super common thing like vinyl is kind of becoming. There are still only a few places that can develop film. And that really quickly is something that a lot of people commented on that episode was when I showed it cost me almost $30 to get that one roll of film developed and scanned. They said, dude, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, it is. What's interesting is some folks said that it was only a few dollars to get film developed where they live. Well, they lived outside the US in various locations around the world. So that might be a really interesting thing to kind of look into or study is obviously some countries are going to develop with technology faster than others, but also how quickly old technology drops off compared to other countries could be a really interesting thing to explore. And I suspect that may have something to do with why film is so cheap to develop in some places rather than others. So, with all of that said, I am, of course, curious as to your thoughts. Do you still shoot films? Chances are, if you found this episode, a decent percentage of you are going to say, yes, you still shoot film because it's a topic you're interested in and you wanted to hear another perspective on it. But for those of you who normally just regularly watch or listen to these podcasts, do you shoot film? Have you ever been curious about shooting film? Do you even shoot many pictures at all? I'm just curious about your thoughts on this whole thing. So let's continue that discussion down in the comments below. So if you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at thisdoesnotcomp. And as always, thanks for watching.